Star Trek 57, M23, take 2.
It's got Star Trek, Episode 2, the TNG pilot, Encounter at Farpoint.
Star Trek. The next generation is beaming aboard the airwaves. All the wonder, the excitement, the drama of Gene Roddenberry's original Space Odyssey.
Welcome to the Enterprise.
With all-new adventures from the 24th century. With an all-new Enterprise.
This is nothing like any vessel I've seen before.
And an all-new crew. Starfleet veteran Captain Picard, Commander Riker, Executive Officer, Chief Medical Officer Crusher, and her brilliant son, Wesley, Lieutenant Commander Data, an android. The telepathic Troy, Security Officer Yar, Geordi, a man with unique vision, and Klingon Officer Worf.
Shields and deflectors up, sir.
Go to yellow alert.
Their continuing mission to boldly go where no one has gone before.
Let's see what's out there.
Don't miss the all-new television adventures of Star Trek, The Next Generation.
What's that guy's name? Jason Sudeikis? Wasn't he in that, he was in that show, Son of Zorn? You remember that show, Son of Zorn, with, Cheryl Hines? And
he was
Tim,
on the show?
Tim Meadows.
Weird. What are you talking about?
Son of Zorn.
Jason Sudeikis?
He played the voice of Zorn.
Cheryl Hines.
Wasn't Cheryl Hines in the Larry David show?
Yeah, like Curb Your Enthusiasm.
What does that have to do with Encounter at Farpoint?
Well, the Son of Zorn was this. I think it only lasted a season, but it was one of those shows where everyone was a real actor except for Zorn, which was a cartoon character, and the voice was, and he was like a He-Man character, and it was like a funny comedy. You know, he was like a family man trying to be a family man.
I like
Jason
how you're bringing
Sudeikis.
something up we can all immediately comment on.
Well, I was just saying because that was the name of the main. Would you even call him a villain?
That guy.
I don't know. I don't even know if you call him. I don't even know if
Groppler Zorn.
Groppler Zorn played
Michael
by
Bell.
That's Groppler Zorn. Yeah. What else is he got his ass tortured? He deserved it too.
He did get his ass.
Well, and
tortured.
Jesse was just saying that it was a fluffy episode.
There was no real message to this episode.
It's sort of like there was a. You know, there's a lot of cool parts to that episode, and it's sort of like they took an episode and they stretched it out over 2 episodes, and they gave you a bunch of stuff to show you like what the new Enterprise could do.
Right, and one thing that's different is the episode begins. It's one of those begin at the beginning kind of shows where it's like Picard is on his brand new ship meeting his brand new crew. So it was kind of like whereas the other. Where the Cage and Where No Man Has Gone Before began like sort of mid
media res.
Yeah,
is that a term? Is that there's a name for that or something?
Yeah, in the middle of the action.
Okay, I didn't know that.
What did Encounter Farpoint like match up with All Good Things though, as far as continuity, because he's coming up on the shuttle. So you see him before, because in the first scene of Encounter Farpoint,
in All Good Things, you do see him before he gets on the ship. But I think there are a couple other things that are weird to begin with.
Yeah.
First of all, there's no teaser. It goes straight in. It's the credits.
Right.
Yeah.
And the credits are like, and then there's like these weird extra credits, you know, before the actual story starts. So it has the opening credits.
Yeah.
And then it has these weird extra credits where the stars are moving backwards for some reason. They're like moving the opposite way you'd expect. And there's that really weird, it's a cool shot, but it's the shot where all of a sudden like you're like coming up from underneath the Enterprise D and it goes all slowly, you know, over. So you like are looking into the bridge. And
you're talking about the Cage.
No. I'm talking about Encounter at Farpoint. So you don't look into the bridge a la the Cage, although now that you bring it up, it is kind of similar in a sense, except it's not all like
not
skewed from the side.
Weird.
It's all like moving slowly, and it shows all these extra credits at the beginning, and then when the credits are done, then it slowly pans up, almost like sort of like a New Hope or something, and then suddenly you see the saucer section of the Enterprise. Like you sort of see the Enterprise from below, and then you like come up over the saucer section.
It's trippy. It's sort of like 2001 kind of.
Well, it is. It's weird.
And then,
it's got this kind of vibe, yeah.
And then, then also for the first shot with Picard in it, that first shot, that was like a weird shaky
silhouette.
It was like
when he's going on the turbo lift.
It was like a shaky cam shot.
Oh yeah,
like some other. I don't know.
I noticed that as well when he goes into engineering. It's like this weird handheld shot
Yeah.
that's all like weirdly shaky. That happens later when Wesley's on the bridge. When you're like looking from Wesley's perspective,
Oh,
it's all
dude.
like shaky cam
Dude,
again.
when it's from Wesley's perspective, that looks like a perfect like scene for like some kind of Star Trek CD-ROM
Yeah, it was a
interactive
CD-ROM game.
game.
I was thinking exactly that.
It's like, welcome to the bridge. Would you like to? Yeah, right.
Here is the seat.
Yeah, and Card's all like looking at the camera, which is Wesley. That's interesting. Those are two like weird out of place shots.
Yeah, there's a few of them in this episode, but the one of the key things I thought watching it's sort of broken in half, which makes sense because they knew that it was going to be divided in half to be a two-parter later. But the first half really has a real TOS feel to it, like the writing and the dialogue and sort of the staging is really, I need to look in my notes and see if I have specific examples, but just the vibe of it was really felt like you're on the old Enterprise and it's this bizarre story about, Q, this magical being just materializes looking like a Napoleonic soldier. It was very TOS, but once you get into the second half and you have Riker, you start following Riker and Geordi and Crusher, all of a sudden the vibe is different. It's more like what we come to think of as TNG, that sort of casual.
And he actually,
style.
and Riker actually watches the recap. Of the first episode.
Yeah, that's weird as shit.
And I always thought that was weird because sort of like on the Menagerie, they make the point like nobody keeps records like this. But then I guess by the Next Generation they did keep records.
Yeah,
like that.
I thought that was kind of bizarre, like sort of like a weird way to put a review in the first episode, because the shot was strange too, because it like showed like a TV style conversation of like what happened previously, and then the last shot of that shot is like the cue ball flying through space.
It's like, how did you see
It's like,
that?
where's that
exactly.
camera?
Where are those people helping?
Yeah, right.
It's like he's watching the first episode.
Right.
He's watching what we just watched.
Well, if you watch the episode again, that's the thing to pay attention to is look at the vibe of the dialogue, because the dialogue really, especially with Geordi, and of course Crusher and Wesley Crusher and his mom, it's more casual communications, more casual way of talking, and I don't mean that they're not acting like military people. It's just more. It's less like, here we go, we're in space, we're doing missions. It's more like, hey, that fabric looks nice, and oh, isn't this a strange occurrence? I like apples.
That's peculiar.
I like that when they call fabric like bolts.
Yes,
of fabric.
I mean that's a normal term.
It's normal, but it feels so like old school.
Bolts of fabric.
Like I
But
should,
it's
like,
new
casting
school.
magic
It comes
or something.
back. It comes back in the future.
Because
And
the future is the past.
It's
And they-
300 years. In 300 years, that's the hip thing to call it.
It's like Battlestar Galactica.
Exactly. We look forward. We look back to look forward. Mm-hmm. You got to go back in order to go forward. You got to go forward in order to go back.
So does the yeah.
You know
like
what I'm saying?
so much on the right, you're on the left.
Exactly. You go if you keep walking to the right far enough, you're on the left.
You're on the left.
Encounter at
You're fucked.
Farpoint. Take 2.
Take
So-
3.
So
Encountered.
So it's because I hadn't watched that episode in like many years. So I watched on Netflix. It just shows the continuous like 1 and 2 together. It doesn't really divide them. So I guess
Where is the break?
The break I would guess would be
When
like
DeForest Kelly's on.
when-
That's what I was.
Okay,
thought.
right. When,
Yeah.
when they walk down the hallway.
and then the next scene is Riker
going in.
Yeah,
The
that
second
would be,
episode starts. The second part is when
when he all
Riker
comes on the bridge.
Yeah.
like, when-
Yeah, I've seen it on TV a bunch of times.
Is
and it's always-
DeForest Kelly looks really frail.
He's
Okay,
137 years old.
So
Well, I
here's
mean,
the
like
deal.
I'm talking about
he's
the
got-
actor himself, though. I mean,
Oh.
When I was
or are
a
you saying
kid,
DeForest Kelly himself is actually?
well, he was acting like an old guy.
Well, he was, but I mean, see,
he
physically
wasn't.
looked
It
so.
was 1987, so he wasn't dead yet. Obviously,
Right.
it was a stupid thing to say.
He looked older than he looked.
He was
old-
made up to look old.
True.
But here's the problem, and I remember this bothered me as a child as well, because I watched the animated series and I watched TOS, and then I got super into TNG, like mega into TNG. And I remember watching that and then seeing McCoy and thinking, oh, this is cute, this is nice, this is a good way to hand
Pass
off
the
the
baton.
torch and all that. But what the fuck was with that accent?
Yeah.
Because he was talking like he was some kind of like
Good old
a
boy.
good old boy moron. He wasn't using his McCoy accent.
He reminded me of what's his name from Guardians of the Galaxy, the blue dude who was
Yeah.
Star-Lord's Star-Lord's
always
like,
bring you
caretaker.
home, son.
Like, he's always been like, "Hey, boy, come on, boy.
Well, it's
what are you
like
doing, boy?"
He turned into like a crazy old man or something.
Yeah.
That's probably
Yeah,
what.
but
it
I don't know if you get older, you start talking like, "Hey, boy,
Well,
Yeah,
right.
what the hell?
you ain't got no Vulcan in you. You ain't seen no points on all them ears, but."
Android
I
just as
don't
bad as a
see any
Vulcan.
points on there.
Although that almost as bad joke was a good joke.
Maybe he retired back
Oh,
to
yeah, it was-
Georgia.
Some of the rest of it.
Yeah.
One
he
issue.
was from Georgia.
I
Yeah,
like
that's what
the
it is.
cameo. I don't blame them for the cameo. I think it's fine. I wouldn't remove it, but it is problematic partly because, unlike an example that I'll bring up when we do our Star Trek Discovery pilot podcast, in which the exposition is terrible. And I really like Discovery, and I like a lot about the first couple episodes of Discovery. It's just the exposition is terrible here, for the most part. Except for one caveat, one exception, they're really good at getting the exposition out artfully and organically. So
Yeah.
like, and by exposition I mean like the information you need, especially because it's the first episode and you need certain things like, clarified. They
How old was DeForest Kelly? Like, in
I don't know. It was the year after Voyage Home, so can
he
you
was
imagine?
born. Wow, he was born in 1920. That's crazy. So he was
an old guy.
Well, he's 67. So he looked really like, when I say frail, I don't just mean makeup. Like, he looks slight. Like his frame was really slight. Like, not makeup. That's like his body.
he's an
looks-
older guy. Maybe he was riddled with horrible cancer.
Well, he
67.
died 12 years later.
He was 67.
Old
so
people were older back then.
That's
true.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Scotty
But he
died
looked
first.
better. He did look less
I think DeForest Kelly died
frail
first.
in Undiscovered Country. He looked a lot less frail in Undiscovered Country. I think it's just because he's playing an old guy. It really
Yeah.
is that simple.
Well, that's yeah, but I was even looking at his like thighs and his
Well, who was? I was too.
He
Hey,
may
I
have
was
been-
looking him up and down
He may
too.
have been the oldest.
Boy, I don't see any points on those ears, but I'll give you a kiss right on the mouth.
Exactly.
He's
Well, I
probably
mean-
the oldest cast member.
I mean, the scene I wouldn't take it out, right? But of course, without DeForest Kelly, if it was just some random dude, it's an absolutely pointless scene.
Well, yeah, wasn't he also transferring back to the Hood or something?
Yeah, that
didn't
was
really
another- I didn't
understand.
know what the Hood
It didn't
was.
really.
The
well,
Hood
that
was another ship.
That was the ship that Riker was
Riker was on.
rendezvousing.
But why would they call
rendezvousing?
it? Why like
rendezvousing?
when they call it the Hood? Like, was that the official name of the ship?
Yeah, that's the ship.
Ship.
Like the
That's-
U.S.
but
what I
just-
didn't
It's like the
USS
USS the Hood.
USS Hood.
I think there wasn't it an aircraft carrier called the Hood, or was it a
Oh, was
battleship?
there?
We have real ship called the Hood.
Okay.
There was a
But
General
the point
Hood.
was they threw
Okay.
DeForest Kelly in
General
there.
Hood?
I didn't really even understand. Like I had to rewind it to try to understand. Oh, he's going from the Enterprise.
It was,
the
no,
Hood.
but that's my point. That's my
It
point.
didn't make any
Is that
sense.
is one out of two examples of bad exposition in the show. And by
Yeah.
bad exposition, I mean they're trying to do something and they had to force it in.
Yeah.
in
it
an
was
organic
obviously
way.
forced because I was like, why is
It's
he even
confusing,
there?
and his accent's weird, and it's kind of like the point is to hand the baton off. but
Right.
Right.
I don't know if they successfully accomplished.
Well,
that.
they did a lot better with Relics when they did Scotty later on.
Yeah,
you know, and
yeah,
when,
but that
even
was
within generations, it
thought
was like-
out and all that. But the thing is so other examples of good exposition is, for example, when Tasha Yar wants to do something about Q, and she says, "As security chief, I can't stand by here and let somebody, invade the bridge." Right.
Right.
That's an example of. You now know she's the
Right,
security chief.
right,
You wouldn't
yeah.
know that otherwise. Or
Security
when
chick.
When
Picard's.
Worf-
But when Picard says, "Let's see what this Galaxy-class starship
Right.
can do,"
Oh,
And then-
yeah.
now you know it's a Galaxy class.
And when
Right.
they separated the ship, the saucer part, and like Picard told Worf to like fly away with the ship, and he's like, "I was a Klingon warrior. I
Yes.
can't leave my captain."
as a Starfleet officer,
yeah, yeah, right. It's like these are the battles between
And they
Klingon and
well with
Starfleet
Geordi,
officers.
they did the same thing with his eyes, and they explained.
Well,
that.
also I think that's a good example too.
Yeah.
The other bad example, or at least the only other one that jumped out for me, besides the DeForest Kelly one, was the whole thing where Picard finally Riker comes on board. Picard makes him do the saucer, reconnect thing, and
right,
everything's fine.
manually, right?
Yeah, and Riker, calls Riker into the office. They're talking, and they have this nice little conversation about blah blah blah. Da, da, da,
Oh, I
da,
think
da.
I know what you might be
And
saying.
then Picard's all like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I'm going to rely on you
Yes.
to like protect me around, make sure
Yes.
I'm not
Around
make a
children,
fool
right.
around children."
It was
And it's like, wait, what?
Where that came out of left field.
It was a weird transition
It
from
was,
him saying, "Oh, so you defy captain's orders? You have no respect for the chain of command." He's like, "I respect the chain of command, but I respect the captain's life even more." He's like, "You stand by that?" He's like, "Yes, I do." Well, then I have one more thing to ask for you.
And he tells him something very vulnerable.
He says, "Don't make me look stupid in front of children. Can you stand up to that task?" You know, and it's like,
it's true.
Part of what annoys me about that is that part of the scene feels forced and weird and out of left field. But more importantly, it's completely unnecessary because they're obviously just about to set up Picard being annoyed with Wesley, which doesn't make any sense. Because when there's that whole thing where like, Picard doesn't like kids on the bridge, that's not unusual.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with that's a perfectly reasonable attitude for any person, particularly an authoritative,
You
kind of
could love
personality.
children and not want them on the bridge.
Yeah,
right?
it doesn't make any sense why they would need to add in this bizarre like character trait that Picard is like has some sort of like mental breakdown around children.
Yeah.
And they try to come back to it later. In the episode Disaster, where they're having Picard
He's
there.
on the elevator with the
and,
kids.
and they're acting as if it's
Turbo
like,
Lift.
they're acting as if Picard's a total asshole because he's kind of like bored dealing with these kids. It's like, yeah, it's nicer if he's not, but in that case, he's totally fine with the kids. And I guess that's sort of the point of that episode, but it's like, he clearly never actually had an issue with children. He immediately gets along with Wesley. After
he's got that
after a bit.
nephew. He's all cool with that guy.
Yeah, he digs his nephew. It's a weird thing that just sort of was inserted there, and you're like, why is this here? It's a little overdone.
I see what you're saying. Well, they also kind of do it in Inner Light, where he's like, I couldn't imagine my life with children, but even that's sort of the kind of thing any guy could say if they, So it's, you're right. It's sort of like they didn't really need to have that, and they threw that in there.
Well, do you want to talk about exposition? What about
why did they do that?
What about
why did they do that?
What about like the way Riker treated Geordi when they introduced Geordi to the show? He treated him like kind of like a bitch.
Yeah, he was like, "You better fucking be formal, motherfucker."
Yeah, right. So
I think it was.
So they established right there that Geordi is like kind of like, I don't know.
You think that was a racist thing?
No, I didn't.
You think that he was just?
But almost everybody seems to take an immediate liking to Data.
Yes.
Yeah, but do you
although
think it was
Riker
because
was
of
an asshole to Data, not an asshole. He was like mildly, like sort of like comically racist towards him.
A little bit, but then he quickly warms up to Data.
But it's I know this was the point. I'm not criticizing the dialogue. It actually works very well, especially in the context of the 80s. But if you replace the dialogue between Data and Riker on the holodeck with like Data's just like an Italian guy, Data's all like, is it gonna, do you expect something different because I'm an Italian guy? And Riker's like, well, honestly, yes.
Pinocchio.
Yes, I did.
He calls him Pinocchio at the end.
And he does call him Pinocchio.
That'd even be funnier.
And they play it as like Data's kind of put off by it, but I mean, it's like a weird thing to say.
Interesting.
What's up with like the whole like Data throwing the rock at the wall in the holodeck room
to show the holodeck?
Yeah, right. I know.
Okay.
But here's the deal. Like, why? It's the classic. Like, I know. I don't think
They're showing you what the Enterprise.
I don't think
does.
it's nitpicky to say, how did they know not to run into that wall? How can Data can throw? How come he can throw a rock at the wall and it hits like 2 feet away, but they can't run into it?
Right.
I don't think that's nitpicky.
One of the greatest problems. Now, many people out there will disagree with this, justifiably. But in my view, having recently rewatched the entire first season of The Next Generation,
I'm going to start over.
One of the greatest problems is that all these people act as if the holodeck is this fucking miracle thing, and like I know that's what they were trying to start out with, but then like almost immediately it's like no, it's like of course there's a holodeck, and then obviously in other series and stuff they had different versions, and there was even an implication that they had something like that on the original series. They just never did it.
Enterprise, I think they had a scene.
Enterprise had
Where
a
it was
simulator
space
kind of
alien.
thing.
Well, yeah,
they had a space. They went to some space alien place to get their ship fixed.
But the whole first season, every time they go to the holodeck, every time people, it's like, you know what it's like? It's like back in the 50s when people got on an airplane and they wore like a suit and tie.
Oh, right.
And like a nice dress and a hat. And they were very formal. That's how they treat the holodeck. They're like, all right, motherfuckers, we got to plan this shit out. This is going to blow our fucking minds.
Yeah.
Wesley's all like, you see these goddamn ferns? This is only one of thousands of patterns.
Yeah.
Also, prior to that holodeck scene, that one officer was showing Riker how futuristic this ship was and how state-of-the-art it was. It was like, look, you can ask where Data is, and it'll tell you exactly where he is.
How would he not know that?
And see these dots on the wall? It'll point you in the direction of the hallway of how to get to him.
Was that chick that was like checking him out when he walked?
Yeah, and he looks at his butt. She looks at his butt. Yeah,
she's all like,
that was some Spaceball shit right there.
It really was.
It's like, President Screw.
Well, they also
look down
had
at his penis.
The other,
I don't know why it's doing this.
The other Spaceballs one is kind of Spaceballs. Actually, not even. I don't know. It's just funny because like when there's that one scene with Q on the bridge early on, and then at the end of it, he says so. I don't even remember what he says, but then the camera all goes like zoom and like zooms like right in on his face, and it's very non-Star Trek. It's like not something
it was
you
out
see.
of left field.
It was very odd direction.
Why would they do that?
What was that uniform? It's okay. Real quick, it's funny that they refer to the old
Costumes.
Old uniform as a costume. It's like, well, what the fuck are? Whoa.
he was wearing different
Just dropped
different
something.
captains' uniforms. Like he looked like
He had an army captain.
Columbus or something. And
Well, there was one where he
like
had that
like
big
it was like a marine
hood.
captain.
So wait, what was the one where they had like drugs on hand? The uniform with that weird black
They just made
uniform.
that up for the episode.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was some future police.
So
type
in the year
uniform.
right around now, that's about to happen in the next 5
Yeah,
years.
the
Where they'll
mid,
just
the mid
blatant-
20th
well,
century.
when they had when they had those
21st
trials
century.
things.
Yeah,
that
that's
was
around now.
The guards were wearing that.
and they'll just blatantly give him a little pouch of cocaine on there.
They said that was like
Yeah,
the
they were just
under
2070s. 2070s was that what they said?
the 2079.
Mid 20th.
You know what? They actually said 2087 was a date they used, and that's like would have been
They said
after First Contact.
no. So what Data did is during the court, he tried to like cite some precedent of the year 2036, and he's like, Q was like, but this is the court of 2079. So
79.
that's why your precedent doesn't work.
That's when you turn 100.
It's the post-atomic horror.
But the point is that was after the Vulcans made contact is when this trial thing was happening.
When did the Vulcans make?
But also there were other like things like they said.
I think they kind of changed it up. As
Yeah, and they
went.
changed it up because like I think Riker said or Data says he was classes of like 87 or something like that. But that wouldn't have really made any sense if the show was taking place in 2364.
Yeah.
So
No.
there's little
there's a
continuities
lot.
like that, and I'm fine with that.
Well, and then there's inconsistencies are one thing, and then there are some of the bizarre, possibly cocaine-fueled production and design choices, particularly with the trial scene. Because first of all, post-atomic horror, gotcha.
Yes,
but
there's
why
always a
is it?
post-atomic
But why
horror,
does
though.
the post-atomic horror result in everyone going back to like medieval and Renaissance like everything?
Yeah.
Not and by the way, it's not like just one guy had like a Renaissance. They were all dressed like medieval peasants and or Renaissance middle class merchant class people.
Yeah.
Except for like those Judge Dredd cops, which had like gun hands. They
which
look
were
like Mega Man.
and they were ready.
And it was completely anachronistic to the crowd.
Right,
And
yeah.
then, furthermore, definitely racist to have what appeared to be a Chinese man
I
with
didn't even
a
notice
Fu
that.
Manchu mustache. And then,
Hitting like
worse
a-
yet,
like
that
a-
was already racist. Then to have a little person who did not appear to be Chinese, but is made up to look Chinese to ring the bell. And again, it doesn't make, because it's like, okay, they're Chinese people, Asian people survived the post-atomic horror. Fantastic. But for some reason, they dress like medieval, Chinese warlords.
I think there's going to be there's some fan fiction that explains this somewhere. All of that.
And then the little person,
even
he gave a funny little look at one point, like towards the end of the trial stuff. Like he was all like,
Oh,
yeah, it was mildly shady.
that's bizarre. Yeah, you know what? I didn't even know. See, that's why you talk about these things because I didn't even notice how fucked up that that stuff was.
I thought the line where Q said, where he says, bringing the innocent to trial would be unfair. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that was.
That was like kind of an interesting twist on the, innocent until proven guilty. And he's like,
Yeah.
it's guilty until proven innocent. Why would you bring innocent people to trial?
Yeah, because the earlier line was the prisoners will not be harmed until they are found guilty.
Right. Yes. Trickery. It's always comical when they have like robots like try to imitate human voices, like when Data plays back the voice of Picard and Q. Now, is that Data imitating their voice, or is he playing a recording he made of their voice?
I think it's both.
Because, like, why is he moving his mouth? It just, the whole thing was really awkward.
I think
That's
he's
another
doing an
weird
impression,
decision.
but it's exactly how a recording would have
Right.
sounded.
So
It's
he
like
has
an
to move his
analog.
mouth. So he has to move his mouth because, like,
Well, I think that
because he's doing the impression, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, he can like remember everything perfectly, and he can impersonate anybody on the ship. So what he was doing was he was just like basically giving a vocalized version of his memory.
Yeah.
Using their voices.
It's always such a goofy choice.
And it was also a form of exposition because they're trying to
explain what Data's capable
all of Data's
Yeah,
capabilities.
it's
right?
true.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
one reason why he lifted that big rock, for example. Like it wasn't that big, but you know,
Right.
it's kind of showing the things that he can withstand and the strength
Yeah.
he has. Like there's that hilarious part where he's knocked over. Like once they go down to Farpoint, and then he just like sits up all like from
It's
the
like,
middle.
It's
Yeah.
like the Undertaker from WWE.
And then he has that weird exchange where like Riker is all like, "Oh, I'm fine. How about you,
Yeah.
Data?" And Data's all like looking around, and then he's like, you know, like I'm fully operational.
Yeah.
And then he gives
All
this weird
systems.
little look.
And then Riker's just like, what the fuck?
Riker's like, this guy is a piece of shit.
Well, Data was creepy throughout the whole thing, especially that like holodeck scene at the beginning, like when he
Yeah.
lifts Wesley up above his head.
was
when Wesley
bizarre.
That was
And the
he gives
weird
Wesley
smile.
a
That
little-
weird
yeah.
grin, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like marvelous when he like fucking whistling. Like the whole thing is really fucking.
Well, that was
You're
feel
a
like-
young boy.
It feels like Data.
That's what that was the episode before he has sex with Tasha Yar, so maybe he wasn't
Yeah.
sure if he was into young boys or women yet.
Well, it feels like he's going to be one of those androids.
you got to edit that part out. Like, what I just said.
No, absolutely not.
It feels like he's
Encounter
going
at Farpoint.
He's going to
Take
be like
3.
one of those.
Yeah.
One of those.
Take 3.
One of those androids that just suddenly decides to like go evil and like fuck people up or something. I
And he
don't know.
does occasionally.
Yeah. I guess
Well,
he
you never
does.
know because it was a brand new sci-fi. I mean, people knew the Star Trek brand, but they didn't know
sci-fi.
But yeah, do you know what? Like that episode, I was surprised at how good it was because you think of season 1 as being kind of hokey, and then
There's ups and downs, but I just watched them all, and I don't think there were any that were unwatchable. There
I
were
thought
some
it
that were
was-
sort of boring.
Right.
But Encounter at Farpoint's not bad.
it was. Well, I went into it thinking like, why am I even bothering? Watching this. Well, I did for this podcast, obviously, but whenever I think of like I'm going to watch some Next Generation, which happens to me pretty often, I never put on Farpoint because I'm like, oh god, I want to watch that. But then I watched it. I'm like, it's not bad television.
No, it's not bad
It's
at
really
all.
not.
It's like not my favorite, but it's not bad.
And
Yeah,
there's
but-
lots of good little bits in there.
I was surprised at how much I was actually entertained by it. Not because I thought I was going to watch it just to refresh my memory. I've seen it like 4 or 5 times over my whole life, and I was like just watching it. I was going to force myself to sit through it, but I was actually
watch it.
But I was actually
Waiting
enjoying watching. I was enjoying the process.
Next time I'm going to come over and watch you watch it.
yeah, you better watch me watch it.
Um.
Watch me wash it.
Yeah. There's definitely worse episodes. It's not. No. It's fine episode. It's just basically introduction stuff. I don't remember if it was during a. I went to a Star Trek convention once where Patrick Stewart was the speaker.
Oh, you saw him?
Yeah, and I don't remember if it was there or if it was a documentary I saw. But apparently, that separation of the disc from the rest of the Enterprise is like a really expensive special effect.
Really?
It is,
He was
yeah.
like, the guy was like, I know it doesn't look expensive, but it's really freaking expensive, which is why we didn't do it.
It also the other problem is that the star drive, that's a stupid name, that section of the the non-saucer part,
They never use that.
it looks really silly. And
Yeah, it looks right,
I
yeah.
know we should be scientists. We should think only of the functionality, and it's
Right.
fantastic functionality, but it looks really silly
Yeah.
without the
Well,
saucer.
so
And that battle bridge.
Oh,
is
it
really
does
lame.
look silly.
Yeah, the battle
That
bridge
thing
is
is zipping around.
It's got a little tiny view screen.
I was like, why is there's no reason for the view screen to be smaller on the battle bridge. It's
Right,
not
it's
like
the battle
bridge.
bridge.
It's not the budget bridge. It's
Yeah,
not
right.
it's not the you go to your room because you were bad, so you have to watch the small
bad
TV.
bridge. Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah, you need a bigger screen. You would think. in the
Yeah,
battle.
why is
you
the
need
battle
a big
bridge?
map.
It's a
on the-
battle.
Yeah,
Why
it's a
does-
battle map.
Why does
war
like
map.
Tasha Yar
Yeah.
have like less access to the consoles and stuff back there? You'd think
Yeah.
she'd need more because
What-
she's
Other than Best of Both Worlds, what are there any episodes that they really use the battle bridge? I mean, they don't really use it
Yeah, I
that
can't
often.
think of anything.
no, they I'm trying to do they.
Because I know in the Borg one they use it.
Yeah.
Do they?
But yeah, I
There's a
remember
couple
'cause I-
times, but they don't always
Do
separate.
they separate? Oh, they didn't.
They don't always separate.
I thought
They
they
do-
did separate.
No, they
in
did. They
Best of
separate in
Both
Best of
Worlds.
Both Worlds
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Do they
But-
ever use the battle bridge in conjunction with like the regular bridge?
I don't think they ever use it unless they separate.
unless they separate.
Yeah, in theory. Well,
Well, I don't know, but I mean, I don't
The
remember
battle
seeing the
bridge.
battle bridge other than the first episode. And
it's
then
sort of a silly idea.
Well, for them to separate in the first place, I mean, was it really worth the risk? You know, but really, it was kind of like, that was a lot of, he said himself, it's like, we can either, get fucked up by Q, or we can, do some sneaky shit, or we can go back to Earth with our tail between our legs. Why didn't he go back to Earth with his tail between our legs, just to teach Q a lesson?
Well, I think it's because he
Data said there was no margin for error. That means one mistake. First of all, why would he say no margin of error? There would be at least a little margin for error. But in any case, point being is, why would he put the rest of the crew at risk?
The margin for error
hard.
wasn't that when was that when they separated, or was that when Riker was putting it back together?
No, that was when they separated.
Yeah, because they were separating at high warp.
Oh, that's right. Okay,
and the saucer section doesn't have warp capability.
But I think the reason that they were taking the risk in the first place was because it was very obvious that Q was going to destroy all of humanity. I mean,
well, that wasn't obvious because otherwise they, why do anything? I guess.
I think that
he had the power to do it. It's a story problem, I think.
I'm just saying, maybe I'm using my bias from having seen, all 7 years of it and knowing what Q is capable of. But I thought that the fact that he froze Tasha Yar.
No, but he makes the point to Tasha, because Tasha's like, let's shoot at this thing, and Picard is like, are you this? He's done all this magic tricks already, and we're just going to shoot at him. Yeah. That's why he's willing to plead guilty and surrender and all that. That's his strategy. And they do the separation because they want to try to save the families, which makes sense.
Yeah,
that's fine. It's sensible. It's just, I don't know how well thought out it was. I think it was a holdover. My understanding is that the idea for saucer separation came back almost on the original series. They just kind of said that may be something that could be done.
I see.
And then when they were doing the Star Trek Phase 2, they were going to be like, we're definitely doing this. It's going to be in the pilot.
Over the 18 years in between.
So the pilot of that
talking
show,
about it. Why didn't they ever separate the goddamn ship?
No, I mean, they could have been. I mean, it could have been just the people who wanted to do it, because I can imagine from a special effects, from a storytelling standpoint, you're like, wouldn't that be cool? We haven't seen that.
Oh yeah, and it'd be a great way to begin the series to finally have something.
But when you extend it, it's like, all right, we see it now. What? Are we going to do this every week? Is this going to be the standard thing?
Yeah, that is good.
It's easier to do a bunch
boring?
of holodeck episodes.
Yeah, so it's a little.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a little like, what exactly were you going to do over the next? We're going to be on TV for a number of years. What are we going to? How many times are we going to do this, and for what purpose? It's neat.
How many times? I can only think of the saucer section being separated,
and then in
3
Generations,
times. And in general, well, that's when the warp core breach happens, and they have to.
Okay, which happened more? They separate the saucer, or they set their phasers to kill?
Oh. I think phasers to kill.
Phasers to kill.
Because they're in conspiracy, they have to put their phasers all the way up, and that's just off the top of my head. And aren't there
Is
other...
conspiracy the one where they have to fry the dude's face to get the worms out?
Yes, and then there's another episode where there's this chick who is trying to... she's trying to kill this guy who, it's an old blood feud from back in the day, and Riker has to put his phaser up to maximum and vaporize her. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Which season is this?
This is a season where there's a woman on board a ship, and this woman is I'm really doing a bad job with it.
There's a woman on board a ship.
There's a woman.
Guys, let me tell you about this
a spaceship.
Lady.
All right, I'm gonna.
She
look
was
this
on
up.
the USS Lady.
I'm gonna write Riker vaporize woman.
Yes, that's what I was gonna do.
What are you talking about?
Are you the episode where he has to vaporize
The vengeance factor.
The vengeance.
Oh
factor.
yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So
Is it just me, or did Riker kill Yuta for no good reason?
Yeah, there's a
That's
couple
what Reddit
times.
says.
But he sets it to maximum to kill, obviously, there. And they did it in Conspiracy where they burned the guy's head off. And then
that shit was nuts.
I mean, are there other seasons? Or are there other times where they put their shit on maximum? Probably when they're fighting the Borg, it's on maximum.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
Yeah, no, I mean, and there are definitely times where they might not say they're setting it to kill, but that's a fairly safe assumption. Like when they're pointing it at some rocks, or when they try to do something a couple times and it's not working, so they do it again.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and there's times, but that's not really to kill. But there's times where they're in they're trying to survive and shit, and they gotta try it out. What was that episode where Picard is hurt and he's with Wesley and they're on the ship, and then there's that asshole who's trying to Oh
yeah, the guy with the water.
Yeah,
that's the final journey or something.
And he puts his phaser up to the maximum.
That's right.
And
boop, 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 boop.
Not a convincing Frozen scene for Tasha Yar, I'll say. When they froze her,
I know that was.
It's like the thing where they put all the effort. She put all the effort into upper body staying stiff, but of course when they lay her down, her like lower.
I didn't.
Has to bend around. It's, whatever.
What else is in your
I have a
notes?
note here that says Riker is hot, but he's better with the beard.
Yes.
Ooh, I was
true.
surprised at how sexy I thought he was.
When
without the beard,
He looks funny without a beard.
No, I always thought that. And like I especially thought that because the last time I saw him without the beard was when I watched.
Well, he's younger than us now. Now his character.
That's true.
He's like 5 years younger than
He's
us.
like 35. Yeah.
Fuck that.
Maybe even younger. It might be like 32 or something because he was like, I want to be captain by the time I'm 35.
That's right.
When Picard welcomes him to the Enterprise, he like smiles and he's all like dashing and cute at the same time.
Yeah.
He kind of actually looks like Wesley when he does that, which is weird.
I thought it was hot.
Maybe he's Wesley's real dad.
Maybe that should have been.
I thought it was some sexy shit
Wait.
when he was just talking to Beverly Crusher.
I was just about to ask.
Yeah.
How old do you think she? How old was she supposed to be?
Ooh. Well, she had. How old was Wesley?
15, 14.
So she had to be. I mean, she had to be over 30.
Wesley's pretty old now, right?
He's 47. He's the same age
47.
now that Patrick Stewart was when he started TNG.
He's the same
Yeah.
age as Barack Obama when he was elected president.
Yeah, 47. We're still young. We're still younger than that.
So wait, what were you?
Not by much.
What were you
Not
saying
by
about the
much.
scene where Riker was talking to Gates McFadden and said,
Yeah, like when they're on the Farpoint station, I thought there was some there's some sexual tension, but she
"Oh
was.
yeah, it did seem like that."
I thought she was shooting him down, but he was like, "Hey man, I can get anybody."
I tend to agree. I don't think that was the intention, but I think the natural vibe was Riker is like, here is a rational request, but the way I'm conveying it is I'm opening up the channel for sexual congress.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Crusher was like,
No.
hold your horses. We're not even on the fucking ship yet, dude.
But
Just
and
give it a bit.
I've heard about you.
And he wasn't even saying that though.
Commander
Anyway, I
Riker.
think she likes some older.
Oh, she likes
older meat.
Picard.
Yeah, and I think in general, she likes Picard. She likes the Trill guy. She likes the Ghost.
Oh, yeah. She's into that. Oh, yeah, the Ghost was hundreds of years old, right?
And it's basically probably the worst episode of
I was
TNG.
watching
Yeah, ooh.
that. How old were we when that came out? Do you think?
14,
14, 13?
Yeah, because that was late. It
was season
that was,
7,
Yeah,
right?
that was probably 94.
There was some bad season 7
I think
episodes.
I remember.
Yeah, there's
I
a
just
few.
remember watching that, and I was like, when she's having her scene, I was like, I was watching with my mom. I was like, what's happening?
Having her scene, you
I was-
mean the orgasm?
Yes,
the
I was
ghost
like,
orgasm.
yeah. I was like, what's happening? And my mom's like,
Oh, the candle.
my mom's like, she's feeling very passionate right now.
She's feeling yeah.
Like,
That's a good way to explain
I
it.
had no idea what a woman orgasm.
Yeah.
I was
You were
I
13.
probably should have known something about it.
Yeah,
by then,
by then it might have been your mom did you a disservice.
Yeah. See, you would have your whole life would have been different if your mom had just said she just came.
Oh man.
Your whole life would have been
She just
gone in a
came,
totally
Dan.
different direction.
Oh.
And you'd be like, "Came? What's
It's
that,
called.
Mom?"
It's called coming.
That statement bummed me out twice.
It's when a woman's vagina gets very excited, Dan.
That lady was getting fucked.
Yeah, she was getting fucked.
Dan.
Yeah, Dan.
Yeah.
That's always a weird conversation to have with mom. Like, I don't even like being in when I was that age. Like now, I guess I still probably wouldn't. But like
'Cause it
at that
wouldn't
age,
attention.
like you definitely don't want to be in a like the same room as your parents when like an R-rated
All right,
scene's happening.
We got it. Daniel is now matured to the point where he's happy to talk about sex with his mom.
I never know. I'm saying
back
that.
to Encounter at Farpoint. One thing I thought was interesting was the guy who Groppler Zorn.
Groppler Zorn.
Which first of all, I was like, until later in the episode, I was wondering. I was saying, is Groppler like a title or his first name?
Right.
It turns out it must be a title, but
think
when they
it's a
were
title.
first using it, it sounded more like
Kinda
it was
like-
a first name.
Kind of like Darth Vader when
Yeah,
Obi-Wan
Groppler
Obi-Wan called him Darth, which was maybe on purpose, but I didn't get till later that it was Vader. Anyways, but no,
Yeah.
it's like that. Yeah, like his name
Groppler
Groppler
Zorn.
Groppler
Groppler Zorn.
Yeah.
But he looked to me, at least from certain angles, he looked a lot like an older Will Forte.
He like an older Will. He reminded me a little bit of that emo Phillips guy too, like a little bit.
Oh
of
yeah,
that.
a little bit. And that actor, of course, he's been in a lot of other stuff.
He did some like voice acting. He did like some Transformers or no G.I. Joe. I think he did G.I. Joe.
Oh, the Zorn guy.
Yeah.
Groppler Zorn. My name is Groppler. Groppler Zorn. Goo, goo, goo.
Groppler Zorn.
Groppler Zorn. Groppler Zorn. Yeah, so
A lot of people in TNG were, like
Named Groppler
sort
Zorn.
of like, staple TV actors.
there were a lot of.
Lots
Did you ever see
They're
that?
on like
that-
Falcon's Crest and shit
Yeah.
like that.
Did you ever see that Gargoyles show?
Oh, hell yeah.
Like
That was all
cartoon?
TNG people.
Yeah, yeah. Did you ever see that, Jesse? You had to have seen that.
Gargoyles?
Yeah, that was a tight. Did you ever see that, Dan?
I never saw
They
that.
keep talking
that was
about
a tight
making
show.
They keep talking about making a movie version of
It was
that.
cool. It was a
what
good
was
show.
it?
It
What
was
was
it
it?
was a cartoon. It was like one of them serious cartoons.
Commander Riker.
About like a team of like a bunch of different gargoyles with
Counselor
their own personalities.
Troy.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
I mean, basically, almost everyone on TNG had, if not a starring role, then a supporting or a
Really?
guest role on that show.
Mhm, yeah.
What? So this was a cartoon.
It's a cartoon. It's
a good
about
cartoon.
gargoyles.
Yeah.
Like they come
I
alive
can't
at
believe
night
I-
and they protect New York or whatever.
Really?
It's
That
kind of
sounds
it's
cool.
kind of serious in the way like the X-Men cartoon is serious, where
Yeah.
it's fun but it's also
Yeah.
serious,
So it's
but
a
it's still
kid
fun,
show,
but it's
but
still
it's-
fun. Yeah.
It's worth checking out.
It's probably
for sure.
like a early teen show, maybe. I don't know, but it's still watchable now. I would
early
imagine.
teens,
I don't know, man.
Early teens.
like Wesley Crusher. Okay, so another thing that I thought was funny was it wasn't. I mean, the music was trippy throughout, but there were a few parts where it was all like extra, like synthy and clinky and clanky.
There was one part where it was like dur, 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 or something like that, I think. But it reminded me of Karatika on my Apple II Plus. Like the game was like dur, 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 dur. Yeah. So
Okay, and then another example of the weird music is, remember there's that scene with Picard where they start playing the TNG theme music just like in the middle of the episode.
Yeah.
It's
that
kinda
was
out of place. It's not an epic
totally
moment.
out
yeah,
of
they like go
place.
through like too much of it, like of too much of the piece. Like,
Yes.
they keep going, right?
And any of the piece is already weird, but you could chalk that up to just that they never did that later, so we're just not used to it. But I agree. It was
What was
too
the
long.
point where they did that? It was sort of
I think
like.
Picard was like was he on the battle bridge at that point or something?
Well, maybe that. I wonder if that's
Was
part
that the
I was thinking it
separation? Was it the separation once the separation happened is when they did it?
Was it just that part?
It was no, but it went on for a while.
It went on for a while,
Yeah, it
right?
went on
yeah.
for a
It was
while.
kind of like in the cage when they start going like at like warp speed and they start playing the theme again. And they're
Yeah,
all
that's
different.
right.
It's all bizarre.
You're right. It's exactly like that.
It reminded me of that.
Yeah. And it was strange. And then, speaking of TOS, there was that part towards the end of the episode where they do the TOS cue. There's like the TOS like theme music cue
Yeah.
is played, but it's not like the full theme. It's just like a
It's
couple
just a little
cues from
hint,
it.
yeah. The leitmotif.
Oh, you're gonna love that leitmotif.
When they were in the courtroom, there was a problem with the camera. I don't know if they did it on purpose, but there was a shadow.
The shadow thing was weird.
That was weird, yeah. And it was also weird that when they came back to the battle bridge, like O'Brien's like the only loser that wasn't like invited to the court scene.
Yeah, I
Like,
know,
he was
right?
like there was no
He's just
other.
like, "Hey, guys."
And he had no idea what was
He
going
had
on.
no idea.
Yeah,
there weren't even
right.
like extras in there. Or anything.
He didn't have a
Like,
name
was
yet.
just- yeah.
He wasn't even O'Brien.
But it's cool to see him right from the beginning. I was
Yeah,
like, I
Well,
remember that, but I mean,
Well, that was a continuity thing because I remember when I watching All Good Things years later, I couldn't remember. I was like, was O'Brien even on Encounter at Farpoint? I couldn't even remember him being there. And I'm like, oh yeah, of course, you know.
Yeah.
He didn't really speak except for that one scene. I think.
Yeah.
And when he was just like, "So, are we doing this or what?" And everyone else is like weirded out.
Yeah, but he but he was around. He was around there.
Yeah, he
But
was all over
okay,
that.
here's the thing that I kept trying to look for, and this is what I went into the episode looking for. You know, in Generations, where Data gets the emotion chip, and he all of a sudden gets the joke that apparently Geordi told during the Farpoint mission,
Oh, I totally
There's
forgot
no
about
joke.
that.
where he says,
There's no joke.
But you know, yeah. Well, I know that it wasn't in the episode, but I was trying to find out. Well, maybe off screen, at what
Yeah.
point would this joke have been told? Because there's like, the clown can stay, but the
Because that Geordi's always clowning around.
yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
When he's not doing Me Too style shenanigans against various women across the galaxy.
well, because there was
Yeah,
like.
women under his command.
Well, because they brought it up in, he says like, "Oh my God, I get it," because he starts laughing. He's like, "When you said the clown can stay, but the Ferengi and the gorilla suit has to go. Ha ha. He's like, I get it. Ha ha. And I'm watching this whole episode. Like, when did
It didn't
he
happen.
make that joke?
joke never happened.
They wouldn't,
that was bullshit.
And I don't think Data and Geordi ever really interacted that episode.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
It was all Riker and Data.
Yeah.
Like, it was,
And there were no point of the episode that called for levity.
Yeah.
Given the situation
Well,
they faced, the Geordi faced.
Yeah. Where?
yeah, the closest thing to a joke was when Riker told him, like, called him Pinocchio or whatever.
Right.
And then Data was like, intriguing.
I was like, fuck you,
Yeah.
racist piece of shit.
Yeah, that
you
was it.
white piece of fucking shit from Alaska. Jesus.
Oh, right. It's from
And I think that doesn't Data actually say, you were on the bridge, you made a joke, I just get it. So it had to have been. So I can probably I'm gonna watch that scene from Generations again, and I'm really hung up on this.
Well, I got to say another thing that obviously it's the first episode, and particularly in this area of television, the characters are not as well thought out. I think these days, yes, actors and writers have to grow into characters for TV shows, but I don't know if the process is different, if people just have more tools available, if it's just the nature of TV production now. It seems like they hit the ball, hit the ground running better, like in this era. Like, characters are more fully developed, like in the first episode.
You mean nowadays?
Nowadays,
Right,
yeah. Back then, it was more forgivable. So obviously there are some differences, especially with Picard, Riker. Everyone's characterized a little different. But it is funny sometimes to think about which direction people ended up going, because Geordi here, and Geordi for a lot of the first season, he's presented as he's like a smooth guy. He's comfortable, gets along with people, and then they sort of morph him later into this can't talk to women he likes without being weird. He talks about how nerdy he is and like he's not good with women because he wants to read like engineering manuals. But in this episode, he's just chilling and relaxing and like
he's a cool brother.
Well,
I know, but he is.
And he wasn't like chief engineer yet.
I mean, Riker
That too, yeah.
Riker still did kind of treat him like a bitch, though. Like when, like,
yeah, but Geordi was chill about it.
He was chill about it. Yeah, he was.
Well, but then you know what? In fairness, I saw that too, and I thought, you know what? I bet if Geordi, if the shoe was on the other foot, and Geordi had done that to Riker, and he said, "Hey, am I addressing you or not?" It wasn't that weird, making him to be a bitch. It was more like, "I'm your commanding officer, and you're being a little too informal."
Yeah.
It could. I don't think it necessarily was to make the guy seem like a bitch.
I mean, I guess it's to establish,
and
like,
also
these new people have like control.
Yeah, and Picard did that with Riker too.
Yeah,
I mean, Picard was busting Riker's balls.
Well, Picard was
too.
doing it with I have the note about what was really sort of off-putting was how they portrayed Worf, because Worf the entire episode is sort of like. It's like almost I have a note here that says don't show this to the incels because they'll be enraged, because Worf is completely emasculated the entire time.
Yes, and but I mean that goes with like, isn't there there's that YouTube video that shows all those clips of Worf, like where people like Worf makes a suggestion and everyone's like, no, we're not gonna do that, Worf. But like it happens like when Q appears on the view screen and Worf stands up with the phaser and is like gonna shoot the view screen. And we're all like, why would he do that? And even Picard's like, why would you do that?
Are you gonna shoot?
Worf is all like, I will learn to do better, sir.
Yeah. And that kind of establishes, I guess, Worf's character until like near the end when we finally realize, oh, he is a badass that can kick people's ass.
Well, and the other thing is even in that clip, those clip highlights that you show here, he is like, it's weird. On the one hand, Roddenberry was like, we want a Klingon on the bridge, but then it was like, but we want to make him not like, you want to make him kind of like a wimp. Yeah. Not a wimp. Obviously, he's big and strong and all that, but attitudinally, he's presented as very passive and weird, and not very bright. They correct that pretty soon.
Yeah.
Especially once Tasha Yar goes away and he gets more of a role, where even if they don't go with his plan, often it turns out his plan A would have probably worked better.
Yeah.
Or B, but they still show him as being like, aha, I'm proud of my choice. I'm not going to like be like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's
try to do better.
I think there was only one time where I thought that like Worf was wrong, was because I just watched Inner Light again, where he's like, the captain is under attack, we must destroy the probe, but all the other times you see him like, look, if they had just done what Worf suggested 20 minutes ago, none of this would be happening. So there really is a lot of that goes on, and that's I guess that's changed in Deep Space Nine.
I like this note. I said I wrote down Groppler Zorn, Crumbopulus Michael.
What's that? I don't get
It was
it.
just impulsive.
This from Rick and Morty.
Oh.
From Buffy Lives
I just
Michael.
love killing things.
Yeah, here I go killing again. But the village, the Farpoint station and the village next to it, what's really hilarious is the village is so clearly a model, and not even just a model, it's like a tiny model.
Yeah.
yeah.
And then when they like blow it up,
They're
it's
shot in
these,
the same exact place over
like,
and over.
These like little pieces of wood that are like very clearly like these little buildings are like 4 inches high, if that. They might be shorter.
Well, don't they come back at one point? It's like they're still under attack, and it's the exact same spot that's being shot at,
Yes.
like the same
Yeah.
stock
Well,
footage, or
And whatever those aliens, those space squids or whatever they were supposed to be, like
Jellyfish.
Jellyfish. That's what I meant to say. It's not squids. That's fucking. I'm sorry. That's fucking stupid.
What's wrong with you, Dan?
Why did you say that?
Damn, we're gonna have to punish him.
But those things were supposed to be giant as fuck, right? Like,
Yeah.
they dwarfed the Enterprise, but they were moving in that way where giant things aren't supposed to move that twitchy.
Yeah.
Like if they had the little hairs on their legs. They were all like wisping in the wind or some shit in space, and then their tentacles were moving too quickly. Like big things like that are supposed to be like looking like they're all moving slow,
it
even
was
though
the
they're really
Farpoint
fast. They
station.
look like they're moving slow.
It was the whole station, so it was huge.
It was huge, right? And so they didn't do the scale movement. That's kind of, but
okay.
it made it look like a small thing that they made big. Is all.
And the thing is, I agree. That's you can forgive that because you say, okay, there's
Yeah.
special effects limitations. What
Yeah.
you cannot forgive is when the helmsman or the ops operator, when the second one shows up at the planet, right? It shows up and it's like right next to the Enterprise D.
yeah.
And then the con officer or whoever was like, Captain, it's 12 times our
Yeah.
volume.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you look at it and you're like, that's way fucking more
Yeah.
than 12 times. That ship is like this big. That's like 100 times.
Yeah.
Why are you lowballing it, dude?
Yeah, right. You can impress us
12
more.
They
times.
should have better sensors.
It's 12 times. Oh, speaking of sensors, remember when Geordi is giving his little talk about, Crusher is like, you've been blind, your whole life? He's like, yes, I was born this way, which means the same thing. But I forget exactly what leads up to it. But then Geordi responds by saying, I use my other sensors.
Yeah.
That was weird. I didn't get that. Yeah.
I didn't know what he
or
was-
something.
didn't
He's
make any
talking about
sense.
his senses. Like here, he's referring in that sense, in that moment, he's referring to like he can't see, so his ears and his feeling and taste or whatever are better. And he refers to those feelings as sensors.
Maybe that's the way what they call
I
that.
think it's Gene Roddenberry being a fucking asshole because
You think so?
there's Gene Roddenberry's fingerprints, good and bad, are all over this episode.
Because Spock
wait.
was always like sensors.
Well, was it the sensors? Was that also the reason why he would get headaches or feel pain or whatever? That's something
Yeah.
they never like followed up on. Is like
They mentioned it a couple
they
times.
mention it,
That he
like,
has had it. Well, yeah.
in
he
that
goes
same
in to see-
episode?
No, in the future.
in the
this-
future.
Well, he talks
Okay.
to Crusher about it, and at times.
Every now
Okay.
and then it's like an offhand comment.
So that was like an
Yeah.
expositional thing too, I guess,
Yeah.
to establish.
But they didn't really do much
But
with it.
so wait, why was he feeling pain? Was because of the senses and the sensors working together, like causing like a disconnect?
It was
I wasn't
just
clear on
senses.
that.
It was
he just
senses.
implied that like the shit
The technology
just
caused him pain.
causes
And-
headaches.
But that's
Yeah.
he wants it so bad that he's willing to put up with it.
Well, yeah, and like they could give him pain pills, but that would make him not as sharp at his job, and so
Speaking
he's-
of pain pills, man, Troy is I actually am a fan of Deanna Troy.
yeah,
The characterization and the acting and the writing of Troy is tricky.
it's like
in
when
this
she
episode.
when she sensed he's frozen.
pain, pain, terrible pain, loneliness.
Satisfaction. Great satisfaction.
Oh, and by the way, when she senses like Q's power, she like couldn't. She's just like, oh, it's beyond powerful.
Yeah, right. It's all casual.
And none of that's against Marina Sirtis or
no.
Yeah.
because she's fantastic, and I really like a lot of what happens. I know, there's points where you can get a little annoyed with Troy, but like in this episode, it's bad. Conversely, Wesley is not a problem. I've never had a big problem with Wesley to begin with. I've always thought that was like a little bit overblown.
Right.
But I bought into it more when I was younger. I think I was more annoyed with him when I was younger, which is probably
you were jealous.
this probably counts as ironic because I think they put the character of Wesley on the ship to attract young viewers.
But annoyed them.
I think it annoyed them because, as you said, you either get jealous.
Yeah,
or,
you're like, why do they get to hang out with Captain Picard?
And also, it's just
I'm cooler than that guy.
It's difficult to describe to people who weren't raised with 80s style storytelling.
Yeah.
But the idea of a young kid,
there were
being
a lot
a
of
whiz
movies.
kid, getting being on the bridge of a starship, totally fine in the 80s. Doesn't make any sense in the 70s or in the 90s and beyond.
See, the 80s there was
ludicrous.
There was like the movie The Explorers where there was a bunch of kids like Ethan
They go to
Hawke and shit.
fucking
And they go to
space.
space. Then there was the one where the Last
Space Camp.
Starfighter, where
The Last Starfighter.
where he plays the video game Space Camp,
Or
the NASA,
Flight of the Navigator.
Flight of the
Yeah.
Navigator. Yeah, there was a whole slew of those shits about
or the Last Starfighter.
Last-
Just like sort of a plucky kid who's like good
Yeah.
at stuff. But the thing is Wesley, I think he rarely was bad at all. But in this episode in particular, in Encounter at Farpoint, he really is not bad at all.
No, he's
every
fine.
single thing he does is perfectly reasonable and perfectly rational for a 14-year-old young man.
Yeah.
I like
it's
it when
funny.
he's sitting in the captain's seat, and then like something comes in, and he's like blah blah blah, and his mom's like Wesley, and and he's like, and then like Picard's like children off the bridge, and like
Yeah, if anything, Picard is the unreasonable one.
Oh,
in that
he's
situation.
completely it's
It's pretty funny though when she's like,
and he's like
just
my
like he
son,
said it was.
yeah, my son just tried to tell you that.
Yeah.
Well, he does apologize for it. He's, I'm sorry for.
I'm sorry for breaking
sorry.
your body. Oh, by the way, the whole and it's one of those examples of something that like we know it for so long that we don't think about it. But I tried to watch this with fresh eyes and putting myself in the place of somebody in 1987 watching this, and I'm like, how dark is it that it's like, how do you know Captain Picard? He brought my father's dead body home. His body
Yeah.
to my house.
They play
Yeah.
that music though when they're talking, and it's all like it's like the music. It's similar to the music they play in like Arrested Development between like Buster and Oscar.
When that
Like,
scene
it's
is
like
happening?
these guys are. That's his son. That's his dad.
Oh. I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
Real quick back at Troy though, like, and I know this has been brought up, but like, since we're at the beginning of Picard's sort of role on the ship here, how is it ever established that she gets to sit on the left-hand side of the captain, on the other side of his number one? Like what I always was before I rewatched this, I was like, wait, maybe he was like really wanted this counselor, like it was his choice. He's like, I'm just gonna have this because I feel really comfortable.
Sense stuff. She can sense things.
Yeah, but like but like
Nah, he liked the big tits.
So-
British dudes like girls with big boobs.
wait, so
God bless him.
so
It's a stereotype, but it's true.
Some of those
So-
chicks had some really big.
Wait a
boobs.
second.
Yeah.
Let me just finish this thought here.
British girls.
That's some true shit.
Like, so originally I thought like he put her next to him because he personally asked for her there, which is kind of weird to begin with. But no, because it began with him on the ship. It doesn't talk about why she's there. So I think the implication is that Starfleet would have put her there. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Why would
Yeah,
Starfleet
right.
put her there?
I think
Because
that
she has no
he
role
had
in
been
the chain.
briefed.
Right.
This
She had-
is Roddenberry. It's another example of
He might have
Roddenberry.
wanted
She
an
had no-
empath there, though.
No, but it never, see, that's what I would have thought, but in that episode, it never expressed him saying, he's new to the ship.
You're
He's
talking
meeting
about
all these
Troy.
people.
But he would have had.
They're an
he would have
exploration
had-
ship.
I think that Starfleet put her
No,
there,
no.
and she has no role in the chain
She's
of
good.
command.
She's good with the aliens.
But before he went on,
He would have
had-
arranged for his
yes.
senior staff.
He would have like already had say in
He
who
would
was
have
going to be
input.
there.
That would be standard.
Then
procedure.
you would have
exactly.
think they would have gone a little bit more into that than as assuming somebody who has no
But I
role
think-
in the military is like suddenly like on the bridge
he
with the rest of the
knows-
people who went to Starfleet.
He knows who Riker is. He knows who all his people are, and
She's a lieutenant
No,
commander.
Although he acted weird around Crusher, he's like, "What do you mean you requested this assignment?" That was incongruous. The
yeah,
whole
that
Crusher
didn't make
thing.
sense. Yeah,
Well, he didn't know Riker. That was the first
Nobody
time he met
selected
Riker.
him.
but he had. Yeah, he had
You don't
wanted
get assigned that. You know, the flag officer. Well, maybe he's not a flag officer, but a high-ranking officer with that will have some choice in who he gets.
And
to
do they
select.
mention the previous captain that he had worked with, that Riker had worked with? Is that the same guy that shows up later? The guy from Shawshank Redemption?
No.
Is that a different?
No,
guy?
I think it's a different one.
Okay, 'cause
although
he
it's hard
says-
because I know the line you're talking about, but I remember it being a little difficult to parse whether he was talking about
DeSoto?
Yeah,
like
but-
Captain DeSoto.
Yeah,
I
was he
thought it-
talking about because I think that that was the current captain of the Hood,
Oh.
but the way he's phrased it, it could also be like it's just some other captain that also worked with Riker.
But was it the same? Was it the same character that they shows up later on the
No, it's a different name as I recall.
Oh, okay.
DeSoto is a different.
Oh, and then never mind. The Shawshank Redemption one was
that's the Pegasus.
That was I'm thinking of somebody different because like I'm thinking of the episode where O'Brien, my wires got crossed. Where
yeah. You're thinking of the O'Brien one.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
Okay, yeah.
I'm just saying. I know she has empathic powers, which is why she would be advantageous. I just don't think it makes sense in a military situation
Not in
with
a
a chain of command.
I think
Not
it
in a
does.
military.
I
Not
think
in a military, though, because
Yeah, it
you
does
have,
in a military.
because you have people around you that
In a
are like part of the chain of command.
But
In a
she can
space
sense people's
exploration
true.
No, I know that's the advantage, but I'm saying it doesn't make sense when she's doesn't have a military role. She never went through any training.
There's a lot
She
of
never went,
non-military stuff and stuff.
She didn't. There's no implication that she didn't go through training.
She's not part of the chain of command. She has no role.
Well, she's a commander.
She's got a
though.
rank.
Yeah,
she's lieutenant commander.
Yeah.
Later on, she is.
Later on.
No. In this one, they refer to. In fact, I think they refer to her as
She's
commander.
sitting
at
on the
one point.
bridge. You don't just get to sit on the bridge.
She's just. There's
They
a
let fucking
difference.
Wesley on the
None of
bridge.
us.
Not
We.
yet.
That's why I'm saying it didn't make any sense. So why did they just let her sit on the bridge?
No, but-
the doctor doesn't even
Yeah.
get to go on the bridge.
That's
Like,
why it
The
doesn't make.
doctor's higher
That's why I'm
ranking.
saying it doesn't make sense because
the
she has no
doctor's in sick
rank,
bay.
Okay. Yeah, but there's two things. there's two.
and she gets to wear a different uniform.
Two things. First of all,
that's for a different reason.
not arguing with any of your points. All your points are perfectly valid, except for save for the concept of you don't have to be in the chain of command to necessarily be like
On the
hanging
bridge.
out on the bridge. You can
Yeah.
still be useful. And you can still be a commander. You can be a captain and not be in the chain of command
still,
for the
I
ship.
can't-
You
but
can be the
this-
captain of engineering.
There's a bunch of people on that ship that are like
in the ship.
I could
outrank
see-
like main characters,
Yeah.
and they're just regular.
Honestly,
They're like the head of
department heads.
astrobiology.
I
or
can't
something.
imagine a situation knowing the characters, as well as you do from seeing the show. I can't imagine a scenario where Captain Picard wouldn't be giving a brief about who he's going to be working with when he takes over the Enterprise,
course.
and not say, you know what, on my left side, I want to have the woman with the empathic power.
Because she's got huge
Not-
breasts.
No, because
She's Greek, but
because
she's
it's
got
such
British
a great
style
advantage in
breasts.
every situation. In every situation you could possibly be in, whether it's military, whether it's diplomatic.
I'm not arguing her potential usefulness. I just want to make that clear. That was never on the
Right.
table. I never argued the
But
question of that.
just that alone would be enough reason for Picard to go out of his way to.
It just seems highly irregular to me. That's all.
Okay, right on.
Pain.
It's no.
Hey man, I'm not. No, I'm not.
That's what makes it like the next generation.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's irregular for us in our time.
It's
No,
the future.
okay, but
The
for
future,
real,
dude.
for real talk, guys.
Real talk, real
We're getting
talk.
Down to real talk.
For real.
This is the Roddenberry aspect because we have to talk about. I think we all agree this was an entertaining episode. It's not a terrible episode.
No.
It's a little uneven. There's et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But
That was the best.
But it
bit
does
of fluff.
it does lay the foundation,
Yeah.
and it's a faulty foundation that they have to correct later. And I think that's one way you judge the pilots. I think one thing we had in TOS was that with the cage and with where no man goes has gone before, there's an evolution between the two. They make some significant changes, but where no man has gone before, except for some additional minor changes, it pretty much laid the foundation very clearly for TOS and the rest of Trek. Encounter at Farpoint, one reason why I think you can argue it's not fully successful and that it's flawed is that they had to change direction for a lot of these characters, and in a more
Right.
significant way.
and how they work together.
Yeah, Data's using contractions, for example.
Oh, is he?
He uses a couple. He says "we're"
Oh, that
at one point.
James R. Kirk. James R. Kirk.
Yes, James R. Kirk.
You made fun of me about that last time.
James R. Kirk? Wait, who says James R. Kirk? What?
James on the tombstone for when.
Yeah. And it does say that. It does say, and doesn't it have the years are all fucked up too?
So why I keep saying the Roddenberry fingerprints
Unacceptable.
is because, and I respect Roddenberry. He did a great job, but one thing he did when he envisioned the Next Generation, partly as a reaction to his disappointment with Star Trek II and III, he didn't like how militaristic it had gone. He tried to revert. He wanted to go and develop, and this is well known that everybody in the fandom knows this, that he decided he wanted to go in a different direction. And have everyone be peaceful. No, there could be no interpersonal conflict on the
I remember
crew.
that. That was a pain in the ass for the writers.
It was a huge, and you can see it here because and they changed that once they pushed him out, basically starting in season 3 especially.
Yeah.
You see a clear change in the stories and characterization.
Like he would have hated DS9 basically.
He would have probably had difficulties with DS9.
But you know, but also he kind of struck lightning twice with just coming up with the characters of Picard, Data.
He knows how to tell a story, and people forget how many
know.
other shows he did. A lot of other shows, you know.
Yeah, because as much as I love Deep Space Nine, I do kind of think like if he had been around, he could have maybe like come up with a couple good ideas.
Nah, he would have fucked it up.
You think so?
He was too old. Because here's the thing: Roddenberry was a genius in many ways, but he wasn't perfect. He added shit to the TOS, like the edict symbol and stuff, like specifically to sell merchandise.
Okay.
He was a womanizer, and while he created many powerful female characters, he also did some things that were not necessarily so great.
Right.
He knew like L. Ron
I just
Hubbard.
meant when the doldrums of like Voyager came around, and like when Enterprise was around. I don't.
His
it's all of what.
I'll take your point there.
That's all I'm saying.
I'll take your point there, and we'll get to Voyager and Enterprise soon.
Deep Space Nine's great, and I love First Contact, and there's stuff going on.
No, I think your point though is that one of the problems in Voyager and Enterprise is the character creation.
Yeah,
part.
like it
That
didn't
is
have like it didn't have a moment of genius that other than professional writers could come in and make work.
In
you know?
TNG, they still had to change the like you said. You usually don't go back and watch Encounter at Farpoint. And
I don't. Yeah,
and in fact, a lot of people don't even bother much with season 1 or 2, which is a shame because there are some good character moments along the way. The problem is some of them are in boring or problematic episodes.
Yeah,
but that 30-second scene maybe between Data and Geordi is like worth seeing.
Oh, totally.
You just have to sort of pick it, root through to pick it up.
I thought some of the special effects were pretty good, but then that whole like when the whole cage in outer space that's like keeping the Enterprise in.
Yeah.
I thought that was hokey as shit. I thought it was.
So yeah, that cage. So that was like a force
Q's
field.
cage.
It's like a net.
Yeah, I swear there was an episode where that cage was made up of a bunch of John de Lancie's. Was there an episode where that mesh looking thing was actually just a bunch of John de Lancie's like standing next to each other to form a chain link like space cage?
I think you had a terrible dream.
There's not like
I don't know if
there was no episode.
I was waiting for Patrick to come in and say, "Oh, yeah, that was then."
Well, I was thinking that it was this episode. I was like, oh, there's that force field. There's going to be a bunch of John de Lancie's like spread equal, like hand in hand and foot in hand and all that shit, like forming a big force field.
Both of John de Lancie's parents were oboists in the Philadelphia Symphony.
Well, then that's why.
Well, then
I
that
like
makes,
John de Lancey, even though he played
brilliant.
he played that rapist in. I always want to say, "Don't tell mom the babysitter's dead," but it's not that. It's
Dishes are done,
Isn't he in,
man.
like,
What's that fucking movie? You
My
know the one.
Stepmother's an alien.
Is
I
it
don't know.
Breaking Bad?
No, he plays the gynecologist.
He is in Breaking
and
Bad.
He assaults a
bit.
woman.
I can't.
It's really creepy.
I
God, why can't I remember it? It's not even a good movie. You don't have to remember things that are not good.
I feel like I'm failing because that's the kind of thing I
want
would
to say
know.
the babysitter.
Too bad none of us have any means to figure it out.
Yeah, we do have. We can look shit up.
Looking shit up is.
It's for the lamoids.
For real. Well,
it is for the
John de Lancie. He was in The Fisher King. He had a small role in that.
Yeah.
He was a very small role in Breaking Bad.
Yeah, Breaking Bad. He's always great.
But he's a very, very good actor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he can go toe to toe. People kind of take that for granted because he does go toe to toe with Patrick Stewart.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking
He's
about
on
that.
that
Like,
level.
I like the end part where like Patrick Stewart, Picard's all like in awe over these beings like going off. He's like ha ha ha, and then he turns around and immediately gets this scowl and like looks all annoyed and pissed off at Q and does his usual like get off my ship,
Yeah.
And when they're talking to each other like Q and Patrick Stewart, I just think like Q and Patrick Stewart, John de Lancie and Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
It just feels like John de Lancie and Patrick. I mean, it feels like they're characters talking to each other, but I also think it feels like they're like acting at each other. You know,
They are. They're
with
trying to
each other.
out-act each other.
They're. It's really
like when you
it's
see
really great.
Magneto, what was it, Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart. When you see those two, you're like, those are two great fucking actors.
Yeah, there you go.
Those two are fucking masters.
They're masters.
They're fucking masters.
They're fucking masters.
Okay. So I have a couple.
I'm changing franchises.
Just a couple things I want to toss out there. First of all, what the fuck was Groppler Zorn thinking? Like inviting the Federation to come like rent his alien torture station. That's ridiculous.
Wouldn't they have figured it out? Yeah, right. And
It's like, where are these apples coming?
And then
he
he just
started,
want to
like-
make the money and get out of there.
And then he started like threatening to go off with the Ferengi as like a But yeah, and the apple.
It
thing,
would have. I was thinking about it. It would have made sense. The Ferengi would not have given a shit that he was torturing an alien. They would have thought that was great. Why didn't he go to the Ferengi and
it doesn't make any
pure
sense.
deal?
And then he had this alien that was like trying to be like mischievous by being really generous and courteous to people. It's like stop doing that.
Well,
And
okay.
Riker was a total asshole, by the way, when he was like, he's some fruit, and Riker's like, you got any apples?
Yeah,
and he's
I
like,
know.
no, and he's like, oh, okay.
That was
It's
bad
like,
writing.
Yeah, it's
That's
like, come
bad
on,
writing.
Yeah, I
you
mean,
could
who
have shoved
does-
a banana down.
I was gonna, exactly, or just declined. He didn't have to make a big deal about
Yeah,
fucking
it's like,
no fucking
no
apples, you piece of
apples.
shit.
Yeah, right.
We're in the middle. Like, okay,
I'm sorry, sir. From planet Earth, we eat fucking apples.
So
bitch.
the station is called Farpoint, which is, by the way, a little too on the nose because they're like, we're going farther than we've ever been before.
Even the name is mysterious.
And then you get to the station farther than anyone's been before.
Point.
And then you get pissed off because they've only got apples and like pineapples and shit. You can't. They don't have an apple.
You don't have any apples?
They don't
They
have
had
any
a
apples.
banana.
They had
Could have had the
bananas.
fucking banana.
Anyway,
yeah.
Yeah,
I think that was
bad.
bad business. And and that brings up another Roddenberry thing that I think is so like his style of storytelling that he really wanted to push that I don't think is a bad form of storytelling. I think he just wasn't able to pull it off.
Yeah.
It's almost like a Japanese, like a Miyazaki style storytelling where you don't have any true antagonists, where any antagonist in the story, it turns out it was just a miscommunication or like a different perspective, and you see that all the time in Miyazaki films. There's never a bad guy. It's always
Right.
turns out that,
There wasn't a villain, really.
no, there never is.
He was kind of an asshole, but he wasn't really a villain.
And throughout the first couple seasons of TNG, it's not that there are no villains, but they're always portrayed much more. It's not as stark as TOS, where it's just like those are the bad guys,
Yeah.
and this is why it's very obvious they're the bad guys. It always turns out like, oh, but the blah blah blah.
It was the 90s and the late 80s.
Well, with Zorn, he was kind of a bad dude.
He was an asshole.
he was a dick, but he wasn't really a villain.
But
I don't
also,
think.
you saw him as he was sort of weak.
He didn't
Yeah, he was
understand.
weak.
And you
Right.
saw their village, like they didn't make their village look nice. They made their village look like shit.
Do you
So
think
can
he
be
just,
like,
like-
okay, like I understand why these people don't want to live like that.
Do you think he
anymore.
just could have been just a moron?
It's like people
A little
making
of that,
bad
I mean, it
decisions.
could. I mean, because you can't explain.
he lucked into some alien shit? It was
and he
like,
thought, well, let's make some money off this.
yeah.
How did they
Okay.
capture that thing? How did they
But
get
if he
that?
knew about the
Yeah, I
Ferengis,
don't
why
know
didn't he
how
go to
they-
them in the first place? That's
Yeah.
I don't know how they captured that thing.
if all he cared about was money. It just
No,
But-
he pulled the Ferengi shit out of his ass.
Well,
oh, is that what it
Yeah,
was?
he was like, I didn't. I just said that shit. I have been talking to Ferengi.
But he could have called them, and they would have liked that if he knew who they were. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's the whole point.
yeah.
Why would he, like Patrick's original point? Why would he be dealing with the Federation in the first place? Because he knows they have like
What
prime
about
directives.
The Klingons, the
Yeah.
Ferengi,
Right.
the Romulans.
the fucking Romulans.
The Romulans would have had a lot less issues.
Those guys
Yeah.
suck.
So
dude.
I really only there was
Yeah.
really only one like theme, and it wasn't like a moral or anything like that I saw. And the theme was about converting energy to matter, because that was like he was like, oh, the aliens, they convert energy to matter. That's what they do, just like our transporters.
And the holodeck.
And in the holodeck, they were
Yeah.
talking about, well, it's not so strange we can make the holodeck. The transporter can produce real things. These are real, just like the transporter.
Yeah, because
makes
if they
real
can
things.
rematerialize a human, it's easy to materialize a rock.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
And then the aliens were like, oh, these aliens produce matter from the whole episode. The only theme I really saw is the theme of producing matter from energy.
well, that's sort of what the show did.
Yeah.
You took the energy of Gene Roddenberry and turned it into like a solid
Energy of imagination.
energy imagination turned into a solid thing that we're talking about
Energy
30
shit.
years later.
true.
32 years later.
And how about those shoulder pads on Crusher?
That was nice. I like that.
Oh,
32 years later.
do you ever get sick of hearing the line where someone's like, "Do this. That's an order."
No,
That's an order.
I always like that.
It's like they do it all the time. They're always like, "That's an order." It's like, "Oh shit, that is an order."
It's like, yeah,
I
but
better do that shit.
It's all
it's
casual
almost like
otherwise.
a Jerry Seinfeld bit. Do people in the military forget they're under orders?
Yeah,
They
right.
have,
My favorite.
they have to be told that's an order.
My favorite thing is when Q is like, you should attack them, and then Picard's like, don't do what he says.
Right.
It's like, you have that little faith in your crew that they're going to listen to this lunatic?
Yeah, listen to the captain. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So another note I have, I know we referenced it, but I just wrote exposition about how the holodeck works makes Riker look like an idiot. And it really did, because like the whole like throwing the rock thing and everything.
Yeah, he really talked down to him during that whole scene.
Yeah. One little minor throwaway was you remember when I know it's back towards the beginning, but when Wesley is walking on the rocks and Riker's like, "No, Wesley, that rock's loose."
And he falls.
That rock is not loose.
No. He obviously
that
just
is
falling
a
over.
Solid fucking rock. So Wesley's just like a maniac, or
it almost looked like a school
Riker's
play
an
kind
asshole.
of thing. It almost no. I thought when I saw that, that's the kind of thing that's the kind of acting you see in a school play. Like, now fall over, Wesley. You know?
Well, how come Riker doesn't know about holodecks? Like,
it's weird. It's a weird thing.
He's like one of the brightest stars.
Yeah,
like
right.
He's like already super high ranking, but he's not
trained
that
how to
old,
dock
like,
the ship, but he doesn't know
he
his
can do it
other
manually,
features.
but he doesn't
super
know.
fucking pilot.
But
like,
Q liked Riker. That was the only person Q liked.
I kind of like that. Well, then he comes back and tries to make Riker Q in the next episode.
Oh, that's right.
That's the next, because he has kind of a fascination with Riker.
He gives him those powers.
I'd like to point out that they're the first Skirt Man sighting at 14
right.
minutes
That's
and
right.
38 seconds. 14 minutes, 30
Man?
It's early on.
That's the first Skirt Man you
the
see.
Skirt Man. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Skirt Man. What am I missing?
It was
here?
like one of the crew members the when they gave the guys like skirts.
He's got like a skirt uniform.
Yeah, skirt uniform.
Oh, I see. Okay, so
14
that was
minutes, 38
14
seconds.
minutes. Good for you.
When
man.
you're like when
Good
you're
for
enlisted,
you.
like the officers get the better looking uniforms,
Yeah.
and when you're enlisted on the Enterprise, you get like this skirt.
Except if you're Troy, then you get to just skirt because you're Troy.
Well, you know what's funny?
Troy's an officer, and she's got like legs and stuff. So.
Another funny thing was
Is she an officer?
when
Yes,
when
she's a lieutenant commander.
I don't know why she was on the bridge.
She's
It just
good
really
with
bothered me.
Good with the
Motherfucker.
aliens.
this is remember when the Riker, Geordi and Troy are like on the planet's surface.
Yeah.
And then they're like, you look over here and we'll go over here. And Geordi at one point all like looks at Troy and then like all points, like he's like right over there. And like the way he's pointing is it's like a condescending point. It's like he's saying like, are you fucking blind?
Yeah.
We're going this direction.
I'm blind, but I know where to go.
No, I just had one thing that I've been meaning to ask because I didn't catch this and I didn't feel like going back. When Troy refers to Riker as an Imzadi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that I missed that?
Okay, so that's a thing that
That's
they
Is it like a
lover,
it's like a
your mate or
Padawan
your
or
lover.
something?
So
Oh, it's a
you
lover.
have to. I recommend there's a book called Imzadi. It's an older Star Trek book. It's a good one.
Sexy.
That goes into their Riker and Troy's background. But the term is meant to imply, and I took note about this because from my perspective now, I'm so familiar with the term, having heard it on the Next Generation and having read books and other stuff that use that term in relation to that relationship, that it doesn't sound weird to me. But obviously, if you're watching this in 1987, you're like, what the fuck is it, Imzadi?
I took it as
Is
like
that like
some
a type of car?
I took it as some kind of
Sounds
like
like
sexual Padawan or something like that.
Yeah, it's meant to be like a special bond relationship
that they have.
that's more than boyfriend
Sexual
or girlfriend or
Padawans.
whatever.
But does it imply one has like a authoritative or
Anal.
or a teacher or like sort of like not parental? That's weird. You know what I'm saying? Like-
I don't think it's a training thing. No. I don't think it's a master-student relationship.
that's
I think
what
it's an
Troy
equal,
has anal mastery.
I think it's an
over
equal
Riker.
partnership.
Okay, got you.
Sorry, I fucked everything up.
Fuck you, man.
So
So buttons.
You can get rid of me talking about sex with my mom. And
Nope.
no,
Nope.
The
I'm gonna play
fuck.
that. I'm gonna play that
It's
twice.
all
No.
So the
Fix it in post.
a couple of things also, like the episode is structured oddly because it's not just the way it's structured, since it's so long.
Yeah.
It's just got a weird, like the act structure.
A little
is-
choppy. It's a little choppy, but, you
the
know.
pacing is a little weird, and like the Riker redocking scene.
Yeah.
Docking
I don't
scene.
think it's a bad scene. I
It's
think
kind of
it goes on
anticlimactic.
too long.
Though. It's sort of
Because
it's
the
like,
idea
all right,
is
good, you know?
the point they're trying to convey there is they're trying to convey
has
Commander
skills.
Riker is like a skill. He is top of his game. He is a high quality. He's not some chump. He
Right.
knows what he's doing, right? And the way they do that is by having him perform just follows the rules. He's just like, all right, here's the protocol.
Yeah.
I'm now voicing the protocol. You know it anyway. The computer could obviously do
and
this.
also, I didn't understand. Yeah, it's like Picard went out of his way to say, like, you have to do this manually, and it's like, okay, I'll do it manually.
Yeah, it was just a little odd.
It does. I mean, was he just trying to like say, like, I'm in charge? You're going to do what I say?
I see. Maybe Picard is trying to size him up or something. I don't know, or bust his balls. Yeah,
I think he was trying to say, like, look, you do what I fucking say.
Picard had a lot of. I mean, again, they changed him. He's a lot of weird interactions in this episode.
Okay, later on in different season, way down the line, where Picard has to like be a ninja on a planet. He has to be a special op on a planet, and they really give him the shaft. And this other captain comes in to take over.
Captain Jellicoe.
And he's like kind of a dickhead.
He's a piece of shit.
He's a piece of shit.
Although he's a good captain, he accomplishes what he's supposed to
He
accomplish.
actually does. He gets it done probably better than Picard
But
would.
he pulls that same shit. He comes in and tries to tell everyone, like, I'm the boss around here. And Riker doesn't take too kindly to that in that situation. Is it because Riker...
The guy from Ronnie Cox? Or is that his name?
Is Riker not take to that because
that guy?
He was in Beverly Hills Cop and Total
a bunch of stuff,
Recall.
bunch of
And,
Does Riker not take
Deliverance?
to that? Does Riker not take to that because
I didn't know
he's...
that.
Does Riker not take to that because he senses the guy is full of shit? Is that the deal? Or like, I don't know, like, why doesn't Riker respect the captain in that scenario?
That's a good point,
He
actually.
respects Picard in that scenario. I don't know.
Well, you know what?
Maybe it's neither here nor there.
I wonder, what did Worf think during Chain of Command? Do you think he was happy as shit? He's like, finally a guy who's going to go kill a bunch of people or like threaten to kill people. You know, I mean, do what we have to do. So you think Worf was happy?
I don't know.
But there was sort of like a, I think the main problem the Riker had is that it's like, look, you're not a main character.
Well, they were also...
You're not in the credits.
They were...
That was the... I think you're right.
That's like the only reason I can think of.
They were also concerned about the captain at that time because they were all like weirded out.
Yeah,
it was,
but
like,
they could have
bizarre.
been. They could have. I mean, but still, that's still. I mean, I know that you're close with somebody. I don't know. I guess I could go with that.
Yeah, I guess you could manage that. You could go with that if you like.
I'll go with it.
All right. So I think are there any
Major
concluding thoughts? Because then I want to play you guys something. I don't know if you've heard it before or not.
At least we're acquainted with the judge, Captain.
Yeah, that was
That was like Data being a smartass.
He's like being like a writer on the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Yeah, right.
Oh, the person who wrote it, co-wrote it, was this woman who I guess just worked with Gene Roddenberry in the past, right? I looked at who wrote
I bet
it.
she did.
But I mean, it was pure.
Gene Roddenberry.
Was this
no enemies?
But wasn't this one of the pure Roddenberry
Just
writer
circumstance.
thing ones? I mean,
Rod.
Pure Rod.
And
I don't know. I
berries.
believe you though.
Berries.
Yeah, I think it.
I mean, when you look at how the jellyfish, not only the characterization of the jellyfish aliens, such as there is, but also the visual style, it's very similar to the motion picture. Which was
Yeah, I
also
thought of that
heavily
too.
Roddenberry driven, and also had no enemy. It's all everything's-
2001 and again.
Yeah.
that kind of vibe.
So I think there was a lot
Meditative.
of that.
Yeah.
In Encounter at Farpoint, there's a ton of that.
Yeah.
And then they start easing up on it throughout the first couple seasons, but in some points, very rapidly, they get away from that, which is good.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I thought that was,
The hand that rocks the cradle.
Yeah, ha-ha, the hand that rocks the cradle. That's actually not a bad movie. It's disturbing, but it's a,
Apparently Fisher King, too.
Who's the?
yeah.
Oh,
Daniel mentioned that.
yeah. Fisher King. He was in that. Yeah. Not a huge part, but he's pretty good.
All right. Any other thoughts?
I have nothing.
That's
I
all
got nothing.
that's all my cheeks can flap.
All righty. So
Next week is
next week will be Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Season 1, Episode 1.
Emissary.
Emissary.
That's what I said.
I'll give you a
Emissary.
preview. I think it's my favorite of the Star Trek pilots.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
you know what? It might be mine too.
Enter my hairy
But you know,
one of the better ones.
It probably is.
It's bizarre and weird, but I think in a pretty good way.
But also, I think the pilot for Voyager isn't bad either, though.
It's not bad, but there's and we'll get to Voyager soon. But my issue with Voyager is they almost abandon the premise the really cool premise they start setting up. They abandon it by the end of the pilot.
That's a
episode
good
pretty
point.
much.
All doctors are creepy old men.
Yes, all doctors are creepy old men.
Adam.
When there's I'm not joking, Lee.
I'm not joking, Lee.
Okay, so now before we go, we look forward to talking to everybody next week. It's got Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, Emissary.
It's
That's going to be
got
fun.
It's got
We all-
everything.
I think we all dig on that.
Encounter at Farpoint.
We're done with an Encounter at Farpoint, a flawed but entertaining
Enter
thing.
my Harry.
But we talk about the opening theme, and the opening theme is a variation on what was played in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And
Jerry Goldsmith.
yeah, like Jerry Goldsmith and Alexander Courage. I think it's still gets a little credit from some of the cues, but it was not. There were a few variations on what the opening theme might be, and it got at least to these two finalists, the one that we know and are familiar with, and then this one. So I'll just start playing this for you, and then we can talk just for a couple minutes before we sign off about what we think about this.
This was going to be the TNG.
This was an alternative. They decided not to go with it. We're going to decide, was it right? Was it wrong? Should they have
the
considered
same
this?
composer?
I believe so, yeah. Same team.
It's just a different. Yeah.
It's very
It's a
synthy.
It's a different arrangement.
It's the same kind of.
It starts out almost identical.
I don't remember it being so synthy.
The first two seasons, they didn't get an orchestra until season 3.
Oh, I didn't.
3 has all sorts of new magical sounds in it. The whole show.
Sounds like Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking, trying to figure out what that sounded like.
And starring
Patrick Stewart
as
a Frenchman.
As Mitch Laser.
And we've got Lieutenant Data,
As Dirk Craig.
Brent Spiner, and
As a
introducing
sexy robot.
Will Wheaton.
Will Wheaton was famous by the time he was on.
I know, but it'd be funny if they. And introducing.
Oh, he was on some other movies.
Yeah, he was.
Stand By Me.
Stand by me.
And everybody's favorite, Marina Sirtis. Riker. Oh, God damn it. Riker, played by.
I mean, it's biased because I'm used to what I'm used to, but
That's
I still
right.
I like the other one better.
This sounds fascist to me.
Yeah,
It does.
It's like
Sounds
Starship
like
Troopers or
it's-
some shit.
It is, yes,
It
Starship
has a
Troopers.
much more marchy sort of feel. Like you're going to use it. You're going to use it in a marching band competition or something.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's a puzzling arrangement.
It's less
Yeah.
wonder. It's more militant and less
It's
awe
it's
and
very
wonderment.
militant.
Would
less
we
wonderment.
think that if we had heard that for 32 years?
That's what I was wondering.
That's
but,
what I-
but
I
yes.
think it would be a different show.
Really?
I honestly think that look, the opening is only a part of
Right.
everything, of course, and it's not like the writers and the actors are sitting there hearing the opening all the time.
That's what I'm saying.
But there's a flavor to it, and this
sure.
the opening is supposed to lead into what you expect, and the one we got, I think,
Perfect.
very good and gets that vibe of exploration and meditation,
Right.
thinking.
That
you
one
know.
is more like Star Trek Galaxy Police.
It's yeah, it is. It's like the galaxy. That's a great. The
Yeah,
fucking
it's
Galaxy
more-
Police,
well-
the jack-booted thugs,
Yeah.
Starfleet thugs stomping.
It's
on
more
Orion
ominous.
Syndicate.
It is more ominous. That's true.
The stories.
Yeah.
I think you would expect a different story. I certainly
So-
think if you had heard that music and then saw Encounter at Farpoint, you'd be like, "What the
Farpoint.
what the fuck is this?"
Almost
Yeah.
snuck that one by.
No, but it's true. You know what would be interesting is to watch Star Trek: The Next Generation every single episode from the beginning, but use
that music?
No,
every
no.
and you can't skip the intro.
Let's start right.
You gotta
Oh, man.
somehow have it like space. And then it has that going on. You know?
Star Trek fascism.
Dun, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would it make you into a Trump supporter or something if you watch
I
that
think if you
show
listen- I
with
think
that
if you
music?
listen- I think it's quite likely you become a Trump supporter.
Right. You'd be like, man, Trump's doing the right thing. I mean, just listen to that fucking song right there.
Yeah.
I saw it's exact same dialogue, exact same everything.
So triumphant.
Yeah. You're like, hey man, you guys
Make it so.
make it so.
Build the wall.
Make it so biased.
And but the other thing is that everybody who like us, who everybody who all these Star Trek fans who like Trump now, if you switch it up, they become like rabid Hillary Clinton supporters.
Oh, is that what happens? So
Yeah.
a mirror universe?
Yeah, it's like a mirror universe.
God, we'll have to do a special episode on the whole like right wing Star Trek fans. No offense to any right wing Star Trek fans out there listening. We're not big fans of yours.
Well,
FYI.
I mean, I like that they like Star Trek because I follow like the Picard messages on
podcast might
Facebook.
not be for you.
And well, no, I mean, overall the podcast might not, but I'm always happy to talk about Star Trek with anybody. I really am.
Yeah.
So it's like
until and I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's
but as long as you keep it to Star Trek.
How can you be a right-wing Star Trek fan?
I think
That's
I think that's where the confusion comes from. Anyway, we'll have to talk about this another time because it's a long
I'll have to
conversation.
think about this
and
too.
We want to be fair.
That's a whole other story.
It is.
Yeah.
Another story.
Another story in another universe, in a mirror universe, somewhere where people get confused. It's like in A Clockwork Orange when the main character is reading the Bible and they think, "Hey, this is great." He's reading the Bible, and then you see in his imagination that he doesn't imagine himself as Jesus. He imagined himself as one of the Roman soldiers, like
or it's like the.
I sometimes think that's where people misinterpret Star Trek and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is great. There's a spaceship full of white people imposing their will."
It's almost but it's almost on the level of like when Beavis and Butthead see like the guy with the beard in the commercial. And they're like, "Damn, we want to be like him." And they glue beard, like their hair to their face. It's almost on that level of stupidity. It's like you really don't get it. Yeah, damn. It's almost on that level. Or like they go fly their kite out in the storm because they saw the Ben Franklin, and they're like, "That'd be cool." That guy did cool stuff. It's almost on that level of not analyzing at all what you're watching.
Almost. Okay, so.
So buttons.
Fart
so good
points.
night. I think we'll end there.
Oh yeah.
We'll see you next week with Deep Space Nine, the next pilot. It's got Star Trek. Have fun. Have a good evening. Have a good weekend. Have a good week. Work hard. Do good.
Play hard.
Do well. Play hard. Involve yourself in all sorts of activities. Actually, involve yourself in your community. Talk to your family.
No.
Pet your dog.
Be the kind of genitals you want to be.
Yes. Masturbate frequently. For both men and women, scientific studies have demonstrated, and this is indeed true, that more frequent masturbation is healthy.
I should say, be the kind of genitals that you are and wish to be.
Or wish to be.
All right. Good night.
Marvelous. How easily humans do that. I still need much practice.
There's some puzzles down on the planet that the captain once answered. He suggested I take you with me on the away team that I'll be leading.
I shall endeavor to function adequately, sir.
Yes. When the captain suggested you, I looked up your record.
Yes, sir. A wise procedure, sir, always.
Then your rank of lieutenant commander is honorary.
No, sir. Starfleet class of 78, honors in probability mechanics and exobiology.
But your file says that you're a
Machine, correct, sir. Does that trouble you?
To be honest, yes, a little.
Understood, sir. Prejudice is very human.
Now that does trouble me. Do you consider yourself superior to us?
I am superior, sir, in many ways. But I would gladly give it up to be human.
Nice to meet you, Pinocchio. A joke.
Ah, intriguing.